Hey review family, keep it tight. My name is Jay Morris, the review guy reviewing music for the love of music, and I'm back again to bring you another video. Probably one of my most rant-heavy videos I've ever come out with, and that's saying something. So, I went to the Blue Ridge Rock Fest in Danville, Virginia. This should be coming out after a video that I did about the injuries that I sustained that made me have to miss 2 days of the festival. I'll put that down in the description box if you want to hear the first half, but for those of you that haven't seen that, and also maybe are unfamiliar with the Rock Fest, just watch me and haven't heard of it. It was a festival in Danville, Virginia, where it was 4 days, 6 stages, and just complete firework band after firework band, paying homage to rock and metal. Just off the top of my head, and this isn't going to even remotely do it justice, Testament, Sabaton, Anthrax, Rob Zombie, Breaking Benjamin, Asking Alexandria, Knock Loose, Bad Omens, Tala, Fever 333, I Prevail, A Day to Remember, Spirit Box, Brand of Sacrifice. It just went on and on and on. Shinedown, Five Finger Death Punch, just a really awesome assortment of rock and metal bands, and for so many people to not have went to shows in so long, it really was just an exuberant, massive community of people who were enjoying the same things and there for one purpose, to enjoy music, to kick ass. It didn't matter what you look like, it didn't matter what you sounded like, it didn't matter what your age was, it didn't matter how you were dressed. Everyone was in the pit the same, everyone was hugging the same, everyone was fist bumping the same, and it didn't matter the genre of the band, no one was splitting hairs, no one gave a shit. It was just a celebration of music for people that have missed years of performances, both for the bands and the artists and the people there themselves, the fans. But the Blue Ridge Rock Fest, I'm sort of dubbing a new name. The Blue Ridge Rock Mess is what I'm going to call it. Now, preface, I don't want this to be seen as a witch hunt for the managers, or especially for the bands. They did the best that they possibly could, and especially for the bands, it was fantastic. It was fireworks. All the bands gave their 100%, and there really weren't any hiccups with the times. The times were good, the sound production was really good. There were a couple audio difficulties for a couple of bands, but for the most part, the bands were on point. They were bringing their A game, and it was fantastic on the music department, but sometimes it feels like the managers just decided to execute the festival by putting all of their effort, all of their money, all of their time, all of their energy into getting the proper lineup, but didn't give a shit about the actual customers. And the final thing before we get into this, if you went to the Blue Ridge Rock Fest, if you were there, I want you guys to tell me, what was your experience like? Did you have a shit show? Did you enjoy it? Did it go smoothly and comfortably? Or do you share the sentiments of this video? Now, without further ado, where to begin? The parking. The parking was abysmal. Basically, they divided the parking into 3 separate lots that were color-coded, and then there was a 4th color for off-site camping, which was a close-by camp where people could set up their tents, their cars, and then there was also on-site camping for people that wanted to stay on the actual grounds themselves, which was maybe like a mile walk from the actual venue. These lots, depending on where you parked, were anywhere between 3 to 4 miles from the actual venue, and this counted for hills, very steep inclines with holes, with dips, and roads that were concrete. The parking situation was messy. It was just in these grass fields, and that wasn't even the worst to come. They were supposed to shuttle bus the people that paid for parking. They were turning people away that didn't have parking passes, and luckily my father and I actually had parking passes, so we had the ability to get shuttled to the event once we had parked, but that's not what we were given. The maximum buses that they had on day 1 that I personally saw was about 4 or 5. Now I want to give you guys a visual representation. Going into the parking and going into the venue, there were 3 rows that were converging, that were coming from different areas. There were people converging, there were people messy. It was so claustrophobic, and it was just condensed. It was a mess. It was just chaotic, and there was very little movement. On the first day, I actually had to hop out of the car and start going to the venue to not miss the first band, which I'll get into that later because that didn't even go as planned. But the parking was a fucking disgrace, and that goes for off-site camping as well. I talked to some people that were in the off-site camping area, and supposedly it was even worse because it was even farther from the parking lots. For the walk, for the distance, for the hills, the shuttle buses were unorganized. There was very little direction, and the people that were supposed to be traffic directing were doing a piss poor job of actually getting people to where they were supposed to be. They weren't telling you where your color was. They weren't saying when the next bus was going to be there, and I really fault the bus drivers none, because these were probably probably just hired school workers or people that didn't have a job but drove buses and had the license for it. So I'm not going to say like they were probably very overwhelmed too, because you're dealing with thousands of people walking on either side of very narrow roads, and you're having to quite literally pick some people up and steer them through while everyone's angry and wanting an extra spot on that bus, but they legally could not pack more people into a bus than could be sitting down, so you couldn't be standing up on the bus. Parking on day 2 got a tad bit better. There were more buses, but it was still very messy. We still had to walk an insane amount of time to get to the buses, and by the time you would get to the buses, you were already tired because you will have been there for like 10 hours straight on your feet walking up and down hills. The last thing you want is to have to do that again on concrete with holes and dips and inclines. So by the time you got to the buses, yeah, was it cool to rest your legs for like the last half a mile? Of course it was, but you really wish that would have happened when you actually needed it. I can't comment on the last 2 days, so if the parking got any better, please let me know. And to sort of segue, the organization for directions were really piss poor as well. They really didn't tell you where you were supposed to go, how you were supposed to get there, how you were supposed to check in, where the stages were. We luckily had like a map printed out as well as the times and stages for each band, but the amount of people that were walking up to me wanting to take a picture of that tells me that they really weren't giving anyone anything in terms of where they were supposed to go. And the security and the people that were on site just failed to answer any questions that you might have. There were about 3 or 4 questions that I was asking to the on-site security people and the on-site workers of the venue, and they weren't able to answer it. They weren't able to say if there was a merchandise area for bands. They weren't able to answer what the golden ticket thing was, which that's a whole nother thing we'll get into. And then of course the thing that I said in my crowd killing video, when I injured my wrists and arms very badly, on the map there was a medical area and it was ran by the Red Cross. I ended up going there and they just did absolutely nothing for me. He basically picked my arm up, just one arm, and said, it might swell up, there's really nothing we can do. No brace, no splint, no painkillers, no aspirin, no nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I'd hate to be someone that was actually hurt, because the way an ambulance would have gotten into that venue, if they would have done it at the same speed as every other vehicle that was run by this shit show venue, you probably would have died of a heart attack before they got to you. Because I think they were about 30 or 45 minutes away, and ambulances that I did see come, I believe I only saw 1 or 2, they took so long to get there. The response times for issues were just terrible. Now, people that were at the Spirit Box concert on the very first day will know there was a rush on the stage. And when I say stage, I mean there were guardrails, big fences that surrounded the venue of the main stages. This was the Stay-Lit stage. And it was for people that bought something called a golden ticket, and it was a wristband that was the same as the normal wristband, but it was obviously like goldish yellow. And you could go into that secluded area so you could be closer and not have to deal with like a ton of people around you. And throughout the day you started to see it get filled up just a little bit. I believe you could buy passes to get into the venue for the entire day. And then behind that there was a seated area for people that bought VIP. Now I don't really have much room to talk because I did join the rush. I jumped the fence during Spirit Box's set, and past that point security just opened the gate and let people start going in. This made congestion absolutely abysmal. Every single bigger band, you were just seeing it get flooded and flooded and flooded until it was just wall-to-wall people lining the fences. And this isn't really about me, but this is about the people that bought golden tickets. I feel bad if you paid up for the luxury of not having to deal with pits and not having to deal with a bunch of people just surrounding you, making your experience feel like you're just packed in like a bunch of hot sardines. By the first 2 hours of the show on the first day, the golden tickets were already obsolete. They didn't matter. If you paid up for that, it didn't matter. Anyone could get in. And this goes for all of the stages, including the Monster stage, which was like a midway to the other side from the Stay-Lit stage. It was the biggest stage and where they put the biggest bands. You could just walk right in. The place needed more restaurants. The food court area should have been properly spaced out. I think that they did not have enough tents to accommodate how many people were there. Throughout the day, my dad and I wanted to get food. We wanted to get something to eat, and the lines were horrendous. And once again, I don't blame the people that were running these restaurants because you can only go so fast. But there were about, I think I counted 11 10 or 12 different tents. There was like a fruit and smoothie area, 2 pizza places, there was a burger place, a funnel cake place, a pasta place, a barbecue place. Just remembering these off the top of my head, there were not enough for the thousands of people that were pouring in all at once. And from the start of the day around 3 o'clock all the way to nighttime around 11 o'clock, it never cleared up. We waited in line for about 30 minutes at one of the places and we barely inched forward 5 or 6 people out of about 200, and that was just 110. They should have expanded it. They should have had better placement management because there were just not enough food places to accommodate all the people. And another thing is the bars, which were the places where you could buy alcohol, you could buy water, you could buy energy drinks, you could buy sodas. There was about 4 of them positioned strategically around different stages. These were a little bit better than the food places because it's a lot more straightforward to just hand somebody a pre-made drink, but still these got really congested as well, and sometimes the waits were 10 or 15 minutes. And when you're trying to busily get around to the places you want to be at and the bands you want to see, it becomes increasingly difficult. People were pissed. People were mad. When you were walking back from the show every single night, you were hearing grumbles and grunts about how this was bad, that was bad, and it really did stain and sort of put like an ink blotch on the amazing experience of the bands that were there to give their all. It was a very hot day, and if you want to go into something else, the stages could have been better positioned. The URW stage and the Monster stage, which are 2 of the larger stages on the far side of the venue after you come in. The Monster stage is sort of on this hill incline, and then the URW stage is completely down a very steep hill. Every time you wanted to go back up, it was painful. And on the other side of the venue, you had the Staylet stage. A lot of bands were conflicting, bands that could have been managed a bit better that would have had overlap appeal, but the time that you would have had to spend to get from one to the other is like impossible. For example, Bad Omens came on right around the time Asking Alexandria came on separate stages on opposite sides of the venue, and you can't tell me that there weren't a lot of other people like me that wanted to see both Bad Omens and Asking Alexandria. And I did get to see a little bit of Bad Omens before I had to haul ass to Asking Alexandria at the Staylet stage, but there were other people that probably weren't able to be that fast, weren't able to get from one stage to the other. So organization-wise, I think they could have done a lot better on spacing these stages and spacing these bands that had conflicts. You shouldn't put 2 bands that are like in the same field and the same genre that people would like to see on complete opposites of the field. That's just asking for people to be upset and sad because they can't see 2 of their favorite bands. You can't tell me that there aren't a lot of Asking Alexandria fans that overlap with Bad Omens fans. And like I said, it's of no fault of the bands, and I think the managers were trying their best, but for a extremely hot outdoor festival, there were so many rookie amateur mistakes that could have been corrected, and I think they just did not have the foresight or the planning capability to make a good festival that was an all-around good experience. And there are going to be a lot of people like myself, like my father, that look back at that experience as amazing for the bands, as amazing for the experience, but terrible in how it was executed and how it was organized. And I could keep ranting, but I'm going to turn the video over to you guys. What was your experience at the Blue Ridge Rock Mess if you were there? Leave it down in the comment section below. Be brutally honest. Was it good? Was it bad? Was it somewhere in the middle? Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morris, the Review Guy, and I'm signing off saying farewell.